Hey everyone, this is your host Candace Cordelia coming to you with another In the Zone exclusive interview. This time we are talking with pro wrestler Debbie Keitel, all the way from Ireland. How are you, Debbie? How's it going?
Hi, Candace. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well. It's great to finally meet you. I mean, we've been following each other on social media for quite some time, so I'm glad we could set this up.
Me too. Me too.
Awesome. So I'm just going to get right into things as I usually do with my interviews. Please tell us how you got started in wrestling.
well, I suppose like everyone, I kind of watched it when I was a kid, and as the years went on, I kind of, school got more important, became more important and more of a priority. And then when I took off to go to college, that was kind of it. It kind of just it wasn't a part of my life anymore. And it wasn't until I was living in New York that I started noticing how many independent wrestling shows there were. And I never knew that there was such a thing as independent wrestling. I only knew WWF or WWE, that was it, or WCW. And then while I was in New York, I was actually working as a television host, and I was brought to a casino where we were doing kind of just buzz work, just kind of interviewing celebrities and stuff like that. It was kind of like a Comic Con, and I actually met Mick Foley. And it was during that time I was speaking to him that he told me, you know, he asked me, "Oh, were you ever a wrestling fan?" And I said, "Yeah, when I was younger." But I just said I didn't even think it would be possible. I didn't even know there was a school to train in. I didn't even know how it worked. And he actually told me about a school in Ireland, and that's actually the school I train with now, Fight Factory Pro Wrestling in Dublin. And while I was speaking to him, he said, it's never too late. You could still try. And then he kind of planted the seed. And then I moved home. And then not long after that, I started training.
Wow, that's extraordinary. So, what was the first independent show that you saw in New York?
I can't even remember. I only went to one just before I moved home. I can't even remember. I even looking back now, I don't know anyone that was on that card. It was like a kind of like a school show. It was just local to where I was living in Williamsburg. I can't remember the name of it, but there's nobody on the scene now that would have been on that show anyway.
We also want to know. Thank you so much. So, when people think about Irish wrestlers, especially those that are well known right now in WWE, the first people, a lot of folks think about are, of course, Sheamus, Finn Balor, Becky Lynch. Uh, at this point in time, while you were training, did you start watching more of their matches, particularly just, to gain inspiration from Irish wrestlers?
For sure. I was always a huge fan of Becky's work. Even before I started training, it was actually the likes of Becky and Charlotte, just seeing their pictures everywhere. And I was like, oh, who are they? And then realizing they were to do with wrestling. And that's kind of how I got back into watching it again. And when I was actually training at Fight Factory, Becky Lynch came back to the school and did a session with us. And I remember speaking with her. I suppose age can kind of bog people down. You think you have to, get in and get out before it's too late. And I think I always kind of put that pressure on myself and that expiration date on myself, which is, I think, something women are very guilty of, because we just think there's a certain portion of life that we can be deemed, young and beautiful and, able for the job. And I think, recently Mickey James said it very well, that she's in her late 30s now, and she feels that she's only just getting started. And I think that's an attitude we all have to adapt to. But when I spoke to Becky, she kept reminding me, like, Oscar was 35 when she got signed. She was like, Shayna was 38. She was like, there's absolutely no reason why it couldn't happen for you. She was like, don't put an expiration date on yourself. She was like, you've already been to Japan. You're very talented. You train, you work really hard. She was like, it'll happen for you. So from the get-go, she's been extremely inspiring to me and all the girls here in Ireland.
Hmm, that's really amazing. And you mentioned starting off with training at Fight Factory Pro in Ireland. What did your family think when you told them, I'm going to train to be a pro wrestler?
I am the black sheep of my family. Every month I'm doing something, and at this stage they just roll their eyes. If I said I was joining the circus, they'd be like, okay. They're just so used to me. I told them one day I was going to be a power lifter. I became a power lifter. I told them one day I was going to move to New York. I moved to New York. I told them I was going to be on television. I was on television. So at this point they're just like, let her off, let her let her do what she wants to do. But my father actually loved wrestling, and it was him that got me into it when I was a kid, and he'd always have tapes and stuff that he would have brought back when he traveled over to the UK. So I always remember them being around the house and stuff, and he loved the likes of Jake the Snake and Hulk Hogan and stuff like that. And it was kind of him that got me into it. So when I told him, this is something that I'd like to pursue, it kind of got him all nostalgic, and he kind of started watching again. And every so often he'll send me a picture of his television where he's like, "Oh, watching the wrestling." It's very wholesome, but yeah, like at this stage they don't bat an eyelid. They're like, okay, well, stay in touch.
Right on, right on. And there's such a storied history with Fight Factory Pro, not just in Ireland but in the wrestling business. It's one of the premier places to train and work. So, what was that experience like when you first entered the hallow doors of Fight Factory and began on this journey?
Well, I suppose when you see things like the series Tough Enough on WWE, you think, okay, there has to be at least two rings in here. It's going to be decked out, and then in reality, there's no ring. There's blue mats on the floor where you're going to roll around. It's very minimalistic. It's four walls and a ceiling, and that's kind of what you're working with. So I was a little kind of not underwhelmed at first, but when you see the stuff on TV, you think it's going to be like that in your hometown, and it never is. And I know so many people have that same story where they expected a ring and there was no ring. So my first day was really daunting. I felt really out of my comfort zone. I mean, when you're a kid, you'll do all these flips and bumps and cartwheels, and you don't think anything of it. But when you're an adult, you're like, oh, what if I like hurt my neck or my back? And you just have all these other concerns. And when you're a kid, you're fearless. But as you get older, that kind of falls away. But it was an incredible day. I honestly walked out of there like, I had won a championship. It was just so much fun, and the adrenaline. And I actually had to travel up and back. It was roughly about 8 to 9 hours travel time just to get to train. So it was kind of grueling in that sense. So I try and make it once a week, but I was hooked. So I ended up quitting my job and moving across the country to train full time.
Wow. And were you one of a few women that were training, or were you the only woman in your class?
My first class, I was the only woman there, but the head coach, one of the co-head coaches, is Katie Harvey. She's been around for years, and you probably know her as Aoife Valkyrie now in NXT UK. And we also have loads more up and coming girls. We have the likes of Amy Alonzi training there, and a couple of colleagues as well that are kind of working their way up. But when I first started, there was only kind of two or three, but that's definitely expanded now.
Hmm. So you're training and you're getting used to, or your body rather, is getting used to taking bumps and doing all of that great stuff. Talk to us about when you were ready to take on with your first match.
So that kind of happened unexpectedly. There was kind of a kind of, I suppose, a drought in shows. They might be running once a month, once every 2 months, or sometimes once every 3 months. So everyone was fighting to get on that one card. And when you're not known and you haven't got the experience, it's really, really difficult to kind of climb your way in. So I was just kind of training away, using social media as a way to kind of get my character out there. And a promotion in the north of Ireland actually had a cancellation, and they contacted me and asked could I fill in. I think it was 2 days notice.
Mhm.
And I kind of ran it by my coaches, and they said, look, we can't run shows right now. So if you think you're comfortable, we think you're ready. So just go for it. So I went up, and my debut match was the most incredible experience ever. I know looking back, everyone kind of hates their first match and they're overly critical and stuff like that. But it was very wholesome, and it was so much fun. And, when you work that hard and sacrifice that much to finally get the payoff, it's incredible.
Mhm. And now, I don't know if this is the case. I know for each wrestler, it's different in terms of your gimmick, your style. I'm personally very invested, not just in, the promos and the moves that wrestlers learn and do, but also, your gear.
Mhm.
It seems as though you're very fashionable. I like to say that you have this Cruella Deville type vibe going on, meets like my boss wife. I don't know if I'm on the mark with that.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
But yeah, it's incredible. So talk to us about how what you went through in terms of building up your style, your gear. What was that like for you?
I was always a huge fan of the 60s. I loved Russ Meyer's kind of B movies, like that Valley of the Dolls, and Quentin Tarantino movies where the women were kind of these kind of bodacious bombshells. Um, and they were kind of the lead characters for a lot of the films, especially the likes of Death Proof. That film is the reason Debbie is Debbie.
Mm.
Um, I just have a fascination with the 60s, big black hair, really cinched waist. So I kind of applied that to this kind of femme fatale Cruella de Vil style character. And it is a big part of me is Debbie. It kind of turned up to 11, extremely exaggerated. um, but yeah, if I was a kid and I wanted to be, a villain in a movie, Debbie's who I'd want to play, and that's kind of the inspiration for it.
Mhm. And you're not only a singles wrestler, but you are one half of tag team the Woke Queens. And the Woke Queens, they're huge. I've done my research, and you guys, you're killing it. So let us know more about the Woke Queens and how that got started.
The two of us were both kind of wrestling independently for Over the Top Wrestling in Ireland. We never really crossed paths in the promotion. She was traveling a lot, so she was in Germany during my kind of run in OTT, and then during her run, it was kind of time for me to take a step back. I had been almost kind of overused at that point, so it was just to keep the division fresh. Eventually, within the women's division, there was actually no heels. Everyone had kind of just suddenly turned babyface, and I remember the promoter approached me and he said, "Look, I'm going to turn you heel," and I was ecstatic because I just needed a change because I had finally figured out the Debbie character, and I knew that she would thrive as a heel. And he said, "Well, I'm going to turn Aoife Valkyrie heel as well." And I was like, "Okay." And he goes, "Maybe the two of you could do something." So we kind of thought at first it might be like a makeshift, segment, maybe leads into a match, and then, possibly it will probably just fall at the hinges then, and we'll go our separate ways. But we cut a promo, and everyone was just so fascinated about how we were just complete opposites, but they were really drawn to our kind of relationship. So we decided, like, let's expand this, like, let's keep doing promos and see if we have something. And the more promos we did, the more people started to like us. And eventually, I suppose the peak of the Woke Queens was when we debuted for Pro Wrestling Eve in London. And we came out with our coffee cups, turned it up to 11, incorporated a more kind of comedic style. And we couldn't believe that we catch the audience the way we did. And yeah, we've just been going since. Our main focus has always been, as a tag team, has always been the character work and making sure that, we are a legitimate tag team and it's not, a throwaway tag team. And, over the years, the only other female tag team that I've come across is Medusa Complex in the UK. So it was a real honor to eventually then become the Eve tag team champions in the UK in, I think it was 2019. So it was that kind of moment that we knew, like, all that hard work that we put in finally paid off. So that was incredible.
Mm. And did you find going from singles to tag team, was that a bit daunting for you in terms of the switching?
N- Not at all. I'm a huge fan of tag team wrestling. If I was told I would never have a singles match again, that wouldn't bother me. My passion is tag team wrestling, and that's why it's really difficult as a female, especially when your tag team partner is signed to a very big company. um that's where my passion has always been. Don't get me wrong, I love being a singles competitor, and I can go by myself as well. But my passion's always been tag team wrestling, even from a kid, like watching, the likes of the Un-Americans, or Booker T and Goldust. Just the excitement that can be created in a tag team match is just unmatched. And um it wasn't daunting to me at all. In fact, the cogs start turning, and I just had all these ideas that I wanted to do. And I'm very lucky and very fortunate that I was able to live that out as well.
Yeah. And you also lived out another dream in terms of trying out for WWE NXT UK. What was that experience like?
Extremely daunting. I was one, like, without a doubt, the, I suppose, least experienced person there. But I went in, I talked to people that had previously had a tryout or that were previously signed, and I asked them, like, apart from, the wrestling aspect, what can I do to stand out? Because there's more to it than just wrestling at the end of the day. Like, I think William Regal said, wrestling is only 20% of the job. And the rest is all media, it's look, it's character, it's presentation. So, I made sure I had the best training gear. I made sure I had the best gear. I made sure, I had the look, everything, mannerism, character, promo, as well as the wrestling, which I have been training so hard for the last couple of years. Um, I went in with everything I got, and the feedback I got was incredible. We don't know what's going to happen. We'll see what happens down the line. But it was an incredible experience. And when they brought me back to wrestle Rhea Ripley, that was just unbelievable. To stand in an arena in Wales and make your NXT UK debut in front of like thousands of people was just, oh my God, it was the most amazing experience.
I love Rhea Ripley as well. Did she give you any advice while you were a part of that match afterwards or beforehand?
Yeah, she was really, really sweet. I remember coming backstage, and we were greeted by Shawn Michaels, and Shawn turned to me and he was like, your face is, you're worth $1 million. I don't know what I'm gonna do with you, but you're $1 million, you're amazing. And Rhea grabbed my hand and she was like, you did really, really well. And I kind of stepped aside and let them chat. And then afterwards she was like, yeah, like that was so much fun. We chatted about it, and she kind of gave me some advice. And even before the match, she really helped me prepare, and make sure that I was TV presentable, because we don't want anything slipping out on a live performance.
Exactly.
But she was amazing to work with. She's really, really grounded, and I have no doubt that she'll be a forever mainstay in the WWE.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I want to pivot just a little bit about speaking out. You spoke out in terms of sexual assault against
Mhm,
women in the wrestling industry, not just women, but men as well. You were
mhm,
definitely one of those leaders, and you made a public statement on social media.
mhm.
Um, what was that like for you in terms of having the bravery and courage to do that?
um I suppose I kind of look back now with kind of, there may have been better ways to go about things. I think at the time, you know we saw others doing it, and we felt, okay, this is a safe place. We can speak freely, but we do live in a screenshot era, and unfortunately, our content, or our tweets can be taken out of context, and conveyed in many ways. At the time, I think there was a strong sisterhood, and I think we kind of lost control of it, and it was taken over. And people were running with rumors, people were running with the truth, and it all kind of got muddled. And that's when I kind of needed to step away, because I felt the message was being lost a little bit.
Mhm.
And people weren't talking about the real issues. They were just repeating rumors that then were repeated. So, the truth had faded so far from the very beginning. I think for me personally, at the time, it was extremely scary. Um, I had kept it a secret for so long, and I knew that there were friends of this person that I didn't want to hurt, because nobody wants to wake up and find out that their friend is a bully, or anything like that. So in that sense, yeah, it was extremely daunting. I don't regret it, absolutely not, because I think that the wrestling business needs to be exposed in many ways. But I think there's professional ways to go about it as well. I think what's been done in the UK at the moment, when you have the likes of Rhea O'Reilly, who's now looking after safeguarding and making sure that the code of conduct for the Eve Pro Wrestling School is in place. The thing that kind of got lost is that Ireland, being a completely separate country, wouldn't have the same kind of government legislation or guidelines in terms of sexual assault, abuse in the workplace, or within a wrestling industry. In Ireland, the wrestling industry isn't defined because it's not seen as entertainment and it's not seen as a sport. So it's fallen in between the cracks, unfortunately. So at the moment, we're trying to see what we can do in terms of creating a safer place for a wrestling school. And Katie Harvey and Phil Boyd, the trainers of the Five Factory, have really put in so much work. They're working alongside the likes of Tuzla about children's safety and protection and stuff like that. And we've decided to create a wrestling committee within Ireland, reaching out to all the schools and promoters to try and get them to join and see if we can come up with a solution ourselves, whilst there isn't actually legislation or a governing body that can look after this for us. So unfortunately in Ireland it's very muddled, but within the UK, they have a lot of work done, and I can see that the government have moved it into Parliament and it is being discussed, which is incredible, which is a huge step. But I definitely think that the lesson from this is that what had been going on for so long isn't okay, and now that people know that it's not okay, they know that they can go to someone and talk to them, or they can report it, or they can raise it with their promoter or their coach.
Mhm.
I think speaking out created a voice for people that thought that this was normal and thought that this was okay, when it really, really isn't. And I know there are cases that are more severe than others, but what I find is that a lot of these cases have now been, painted with the same brush. And there's different levels, and that's what we're trying to work on at the moment. Is the severity of each case. And what people don't realize as well is that there may have been a time during speaking out that we decided to share our stories, but it is perfectly okay and perfectly acceptable to decide to withdraw that from the public and to deal with that in a private manner, especially if there are legal cases involved or anything like that, or it's with the authorities. It's perfectly okay to not discuss that on social media and take it to a more private place. And I think because it was so public, that people really struggle with the idea of things being handled privately now, because there were closed doors within the wrestling business for so long. But I think speaking out was a huge wake up call. And I would hate to see some bad eggs destroy an entire industry that so many of us have worked so hard to build, especially the Irish wrestling scene, because it is so small. And wrestling in this country has only been around the last 5 or 6 years, and it was really thriving from 2018, 2019. And I would hate to see that fall by the wayside because of a couple of bad eggs. So the focus here in Ireland right now is making sure safety procedures are in place, making sure that there's a code of conduct, and that kind of behavior just isn't tolerated in wrestling anymore. And I think everyone at this point knows what to call out as bad behavior. So I think speaking out has done wonders for a business that deserves to thrive without the likes of abuse, harassment, bullying, and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm. And due to your courage and being a voice in this really important movement, you've been dubbed as sort of a talent liaison for Fight Factory. Do you mind talking more about that role?
Sure. So basically, I discussed with the head trainers, Phil Boyd and Katie Harvey, that I'd like to get involved. I found that I was always very good at looking after the fans when they came into the building and stuff like that. And I have a really good repertoire with my fellow trainees and colleagues. And I just said, I would be totally okay with this position being the middleman for the fans and the wrestlers. If for instance someone had an issue or a query or wanted to make a complaint and they didn't feel comfortable going, straight to the source or straight to the coaches, they could come to me and then I could raise that for them. And it just kind of makes things a little bit easier for those that are a little bit hesitant, contacting someone they may not know that well. Or a lot of people kind of fear the idea of talking to someone of authority, so I would then be the person that they come to and I can do it for them, or I could do it with them, depending on how comfortable they were with the situation. But I just thought at the time that it's something that, if you're in a company or any other kind of gym or club, there's always some sort of rep that you can go to for complaints, someone in HR that would look after this kind of stuff, that's like a middleman between the boss and the rest of the clients or the colleagues. So when they asked me if I'd be interested, I was like, absolutely, I'd love to.
Mm, that sounds wonderful. And thank you so much for what you do in this industry, not just as a wrestler, but making fans and making other people feel comfortable in this business, which I personally think is very important. We're talking about fans a little bit, and I want to ask you in Ireland, because we still have this pandemic happening. What has that been like for you in this industry, navigating the COVID-19 pandemic for the past year and some change right now?
Mhm. Well, for Ireland, there's been nothing. Not one wrestling show has taken place. There may have been one between, I suppose, lockdowns where restrictions have been lifted. We're running off a level system at the moment. We're back in level 5, which is the highest level at the moment. So it's the most we can do right now is travel 5 kilometers from our house for exercise. Everyone's working from home. All the stores and supermarkets are open, but retail, hospitality is all shut. So we're really working with nothing at the moment. The only way, I suppose, to kind of get wrestling material out there is to use throwbacks or do interviews and podcasts to stay relevant, which I'm always so grateful for. But right now, wrestling doesn't exist right now in Ireland, unfortunately. But that doesn't mean that we're not, behind the scenes watching, studying, training, working out as much as we can, even though the gyms are closed. So it has been tough on the mind and body, and trying to stay in the zone and trying to stay focused on something when you have no resources. So it's been extremely difficult, and a lot of people rely on wrestling for their mental health. It's an escape for the fan and for the competitor, and so without it, a lot of us have kind of felt lost for a while. And there was a period there where I didn't even want to watch wrestling. I didn't want anything to do with it, and that wasn't even from the result of speaking out. That was just, I can't do the thing I love, so I don't want to be around it. So that was kind of a struggle for a little while, but I think now the grass is getting greener, the sky is getting clearer, and I'm hoping that soon, hopefully in the summer, we'll be back in a ring training again and we can start building the scene up again.
I hope that for you guys as well. And you're right, things seem to be slowly opening up with vaccinations, and some things are being lifted. It's just a case, or rather, country by country
Mhm.
basis. Speaking of countries, because you did mention this at the top of the interview, that you trained in Japan, which is a dream for so many wrestlers. Uh,
Yeah.
talk to us about the first time you landed in Japan and you started that journey, training and doing some matches.
Before I went over, I kind of studied up on the culture, and I just wanted to make sure that I was respectful. I think that's so important when you travel. And I noticed that there was so many things like, that I'd be guilty of here in Ireland, listening to loud music on the bus, or, taking a phone call on the train. And it's not that it's like not allowed or anything. It's just they're so respectful of people's, space and peace of mind. And it's like publicly, I suppose you'd be walking down the street and having a loud conversation, and that would just never happen in Japan. People are very respectful of other people. In Japan, if you're sick or you have a cold, you wear a mask to protect the other person. It's a very, caring culture. So I wanted to make sure that I, was extremely respectful when I went over there. And I even brought gifts for Emmy Sakura, who was hosting me and training me. And she was so shocked. In Irish culture as well, like, you'd never show up to someone's house without like a box of chocolates or something nice for them for hosting you. So a lot of the traditions would be kind of the same. So when I arrived, she was just so lovely. I didn't know my way around. I didn't understand the transport system. I thought I could get on a train and it would just take me where I needed to go. It was so stressful. And I made the mistake of not getting Wi-Fi installed on my phone in the airport. So when I left the airport, I couldn't get Wi-Fi anywhere. So I had no data on my phone. So it was so stressful. But she was so lovely. And you've seen her recently on TV as well, Rio. She was Emmy Sakura's kind of next in line, and I got to train with her as well, and she was amazing. She really helped me with, getting the basics, and drop kicks and bumping and all that kind of stuff. The two of them were just incredible, and they gave me so much time when they didn't have to. So it was a credible experience.
And what's the first thing when you were thinking, I'm going to Japan, I have to do this? What's the first thing that you did besides wrestling?
Oh, I went to Disneyland.
My goodness, how was that?
It was amazing, but the problem, I kind of, I'm so guilty of packing my schedule. I don't allow like breaks or lunches. I just pack my schedule. So I literally finished a training session, got on a train, went to Disneyland, and then had to get back in time for a show I had that evening. And like, this is like a huge, like, 2 or 3 parks. There's just no way you can do the whole thing in a couple of hours. So I had to, and it was lashing raining, so like it was just a bit of a nightmare. So I was like asking everyone, oh, what's popular, what's the best, amusement, whatever. So I did as much as I could, and I bought all the merchandise that you couldn't get in Europe. I think I have something here actually.
I'm jealous.
I don't know if you can see.
Oh, that is perfect for you, for your
Yeah.
fantastic. That is so on brand, Debbie.
I saw it. I was like, yeah, I have to get that.
Oh, that is, I'm super jealous. I want to go to Japan, period. I don't even care where I go, Disneyland, wherever. That's on my bucket list. So,
Oh,
uh,
it's incredible. It is in itself like Disneyland for wrestling.
mm,
And I think when I go back again, I'll allow maybe a couple of days or just more downtime to experience the country.
mhm.
I do try my best whenever I'm flown anywhere to at least get an hour or two to just kind of walk around, see some, landmarks, or try and get to a museum if I can. Just to kind of make the most of the trip, because you arrive at a venue at like 8 a.m. and you've got like hours to kill. You might as well use that time and go see some sights, walk around. So I always try my best to kind of utilize my time, I suppose.
I totally agree. And what other dream countries are on your list that you would love to, that you haven't traveled to yet, but would love to in terms of wrestling?
I'd love to go to Italy.
Mm,
That's been a dream of mine. I'd love to go to France. I've been to Paris, but that more like a city break, nothing to do with wrestling. Um, I'd love to wrestle in Bulgaria. I'd love to wrestle like all over. Honestly, any chance to wrestle outside of Ireland or the UK, it would
Mm,
be an honor.
yes, Bulgaria. I wonder what the scene is like there. I have no idea, but I'm sure there is a scene,
Yeah.
whether it's small or big. There's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
scene everywhere.
Even in the likes of Norway and Denmark, wrestling seems to really thrive there as well. So it'd be incredible to get over there as well.
Absolutely. We're talking about the pandemic and being in Japan in hopes of, getting things back to normal as soon as possible. But for Debbie Keitel, what would be next for you after this pandemic?
It's so hard to kind of think into the future because I think over the last year, that's kind of what I suppose didn't serve me well because I just kept saying positive about things and hoping that, oh, maybe in a month, and then next thing 6 months go by, a year goes by. So I'm just kind of taking it week by week. For me personally, I'm all, set to be back in the ring and to tour and to wrestle wherever I can again. But for me going forward, it's not going to be quantity anymore. It's going to be quality. Um, I think it's important now that we take responsibility for the places that we work in. We have to make sure that the ring is safe, that there's a medic, that we're looked after in that sense. And it's not just, we need to make sure that there's a code of conduct, there's safety procedures, um, these things are in place before we even step foot in a promotion. So that's going to be the real test when the doors start opening again. Will people hold promoters and schools accountable? Um, my responsibility is to make sure that anyone training within the Fight Factory is safe, anyone in Irish wrestling is safe, and I want to be someone that people come to if they feel okay, maybe something's not right here. As I said, my focus is on rebuilding the scene and making sure people are safe and comfortable and are excited for wrestling again, because I think that's something that's been really lost over the last year is the excitement. I think more and more we see people hate wrestling more than love it,
Mm.
and which is so funny. Being a wrestling fan myself, sometimes I'm like, oh, turn it off, I'm sick of it. But I think my main focus for the future is to rebuild the Irish scene and showcase the talent. I mean, you couldn't swing a cat last year, or sorry, the year before, without hitting an Irish person in the UK. I mean, we really are sought after wrestlers, and I'm just hoping that we just keep building the scene and throwing out these wrestlers and showing that the Irish can hang with everyone.
Yeah, yeah. And you've made such an impact in such a short amount of time. I mean, you've only been in this business for, I believe, between 3 to 4 years, which is unreal. The impact that you have on this business. What's your advice for any young girls or women looking to make their own impact in wrestling, just like you have?
I would say don't ever take no for an answer. If someone says, you're not what I'm looking for, okay, well, what are you looking for? Because I'm willing to improve and learn. So you need to tell me what you want so I can work on it. I think for so long, we were given certain moves, we were told what to wear, we were told what to say. And I think, when you see things like, are recently on AEW, you have Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa having an incredible main event, a lights off, no DQ hardcore match. And when I was a kid, that would be unheard of.
Mm.
So to see that, something like that be televised now is just incredible. And why stop there? I think persevere, push yourself. So many people told me, oh, use social media too much. You shouldn't have to, you shouldn't wear that. You should do this. You shouldn't use that move. You should do this. So many people had something to say, but no one had anything to help, like to say to help me. It was all this criticism, but no, offer to help. And something I kind of stand by is that if someone's critiquing you or reviewing your work and you're not willing to switch places with them right there in that moment, take it with a pinch of salt.
Mm.
Go with your gut, and if you want it, you can 100% achieve it, but you have to do it on your terms. Just be your most authentic self, and that would be my advice.
Wise words from Debbie Keitel.
Yeah.
So the last question that I have for you today, it's a really simple one. What is your dream match?
Oh, I think my dream match would be against Emi Sakura. She's just been such a huge influence, and it would be my honor to be in a ring with her.
Simple yet sweet. Thank you so much, Debbie Keitel. This has been phenomenal. I really appreciate your taking the time out to do this interview all the way from Ireland. I hope to one day visit your country myself. I always end our interviews here on In the Zone with you just plugging away in terms of your websites, your social media, and where we can find your merch. So the floor is now yours.
Oh, thank you so much. So I'm actually going to be releasing some new merch on Monday, which is March 29th. It's my birthday on March 31st. So I'm going to plug some merch for my birthday week. So you can purchase that at debbiecartel.bigcartel.com. You can find me on Instagram at the_Debbie_Keitel. And you can find me on Twitter at Debbie Keitel. And if you have, the likes of a booking query, or if you'd like to do an interview, you can reach me on debbiekeitelofficial@gmail.com.
Excellent. Thank you so much once again, Debbie, for your time and your talents. Thank you all for watching In the Zone once again, where we bring you exclusive interviews with your favorite wrestlers, baseball players, broadcasters. The list goes on in sports and sports lifestyle. Stay tuned for more here at In the Zone. I am your host, Candace Cordelia, signing off.